And I think all of the others have the or the speed of darkness, but so, yeah.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today. I want everybody to say hello to Trisha Ricketts, who is an author, a poet, a songwriter, a former English teacher, which I want to hear a little bit about. And so Trisha's latest book is called Speed of Dark. It's a novel. I'm really excited to be talking to another fiction writer. Oh, awesome. Show it off. Looks wonderful. So I feel like as we get started, I was just commenting on Trisha's lovely background with her artwork, which she said represents her family and her grandmother, painted by family members, and all her books. And I said, you know, in contrast to what looks behind me to be a jail cell, isn't actually a jail cell. I am away at a writing retreat. So this is my room, which is quite stark, but I'm very happy with it. It's got this big, beautiful window. And so I am at this week-long writing retreat in Racine, Wisconsin, right on Lake Michigan. So I can walk out and see the lake and see all the beautiful trees. But I have so much time and space to write. And I was just saying that it's wonderful, but it's also a little bit scary at times because it is just this blank canvas. And the first 2 days, this is my third day, the first 2 days I was really enjoying, like, oh, this just deep dive into this chapter and I can figure out what I want to do, and it was going well. And this morning I woke up with just some anxiety and I thought, oh gosh, you know, what is this about? I'm almost to the end of the chapter. I think I know what's going to happen. And I realized quite quickly as I sat down to look at it that I was almost at the end of the chapter, and this was like the emotional pay dirt of the chapter. Like, this is the whole reason for this chapter, was to have this emotional moment between this mother and her son. And as I'm thinking, what does she want from her son? All of this stuff comes up personally, you know, like that. I think, well, I have two sons, right? What would I want to say to them? Of course. And I thought, this is why I feel this anxiety, because there's like real emotion here, and there's things that I really want to express. And of course, that's why we write. And when you get
I
to it,
agree with you. I think at times we put the pressure on ourselves. It's daunting to get it right the first time. And what I even used to tell my students in advanced placement lit and advanced composition was, you've got to go to play mode. You have to go to mode where mistakes are okay. It's kind of like the tenets of doing a brainstorm. Everything is fine. And all of a sudden, if you just keep going with that mentality and even write things that don't work or are wrong, your spirit is going to find not the hook, but the place to, like, oh, now I'm there. But I think that freedom to be wrong when you're drafting is what it takes to find the spirit. And I've heard many authors say, and even instructors, that they didn't do the writing. The spirit or the muse came through them, and that's where the writing lies. And I absolutely agree with that. So maybe if you can get into that mode.
So yeah, how do you are someone yourself as an artist, multifaceted artist, multimedia, you know, you obviously have this relationship with the muse. You have found a way to kind of have that dance with it. And then you, in your past, have worked with high school students, you know, and coming at it from the English, you know, like we have to learn certain things about English. You know, how do you bring those two things together? And just, I mean, I guess just give us a little glimpse into, as an English teacher, how do you bring together that, like, we want to learn certain rules and conventions about English, but we also want to be free, have inspiration, and not be too tied to these rules when we're trying to create something?
Well, as with anything, I think there's the art of it and the science of it. And so the art of it is all about the passion and the spirit and getting to the core of what you, not only what you read, but what you write. So, but then the science of it are like the devices one could use, the alliteration, the syntax, the flow of a paragraph. To that point, Flaubert, when he was writing Madame Bovary, spent one entire week on a single sentence because he wanted the sound of it to mirror the mood. And so I would tell kids, you know, when you know what these devices are, some people get there naturally, instinctively, but when you know what some of them are, and I taught them for years and years and years, I kind of naturally put them into the way that I craft things. But if I lean too heavily on that, the kind of the science of it, I lose the spirit. So it's there's another dance. Not only the dance you do with yourself and freeing yourself, but the dance of finding that the sweet spot between those two it's kind of miraculous, actually.
Do you think it's a drafting process? Like I try to come at my first draft allowing myself to be much looser, and I get caught up in my head a lot because I'm always editing. You know, as an editor, I'm hard to turn that off. So I have to, when I start to feel kind of bunched up and frustrated, I have to remember, I don't need to edit. Just blah, 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 make a mess. Let that spirit take, you know, forefront for the first draft. And then when you do revisions, kind of bring in and look at it from a more left brain perspective.
Exactly. Well, excuse me. I used to tell my students too, I said, we would draw the picture of your critic or editor. And they would come up with these heinous, monstery things, and you know, sometimes it would be their mom or a former
don't say that.
Like that. You know, and so I'd say, all right, now what I want you to do is put that same critic or editor into a chair and chain them up and put a mask, you know, like gag them and blindfold them and put them over there. And now you are free to write whatever the heck you want to put down on paper. And usually in the spirit of those moments lie the core of what you really want to get at. And but you've got to keep that editor at bay. And I would say second draft is when you bring in the editor that's looking at kind of the holistic issues. And this is kind of the science of this. And then the third time, or maybe the seventh, then you bring in the fine line editor, the one who's going to stat and, you know, oh, you didn't have an apostrophe there and you used the wrong form of there, and there, you know, that kind of thing. But if that person is in there too soon, it becomes daunting. It's just like the same pressure as if you think, I've got to get this scene right, or just trust that you'll get there. Right. You'll get there. But eventually, and I think writing
and it takes what it takes. You know, some take longer. Sometimes things do come through you and they come out and you love them. You just need a little bit of work. Other times you do feel like you're struggling, but it just, you know, that's one thing I reminded myself of today too. Like being here in a retreat for 6 days, thinking I want to get this. You know, I want to get all of this done, and then stepping back and thinking, who decided that, and why would that be good as opposed to something else? Like, why not just be in the space and see what comes through? And what came out this morning was actually something I didn't expect. So I think there is that, you know, relaxing, of course, into the process. But I wanted to ask you more about reading, you know, as an English teacher, and I'm sure an avid reader. Do you have any suggestions or advice for readers who also want to write? You know, like, how can we look at books, or when we have our reading hat on and we're reading, how can we look at that? Like I was thinking about what you were just saying about the editing. And sometimes I fall into this trap of assuming this author is so brilliant and it all just flowed from their pen exactly this way, which we know isn't true. But to look at the books that we read and be able to take something from them, I don't even know what my question is, I guess. Just how do we be better readers to inform our writing?
Well, I have about 3 thoughts actually on that. And one thing when you're reading, especially when you get to a draft and you think, I'm getting close to this being a final copy, And I would have my students do this too. I called it a buzz read because they would all have their papers in front of them. Sometimes they were narratives, memoirs, sometimes they were essays, and sometimes they were research articles. And I would say, all right, you're going to feel really dumb, but I want you to do this. And they would hold their papers. I said, I want you to read out loud, but kind of quietly to yourself, your own paper. And so you're getting the words in through the auditory rather than through the visual into the mental. And I said, you will pick up things you think like, wait, I said that doesn't, you will. So the whole room would be fairly quiet in a sense, except there'd be this buzz going on. And some of them would stop short because they were too embarrassed. You know, these were 18-year-olds. But some of them would go all the way to the end. They said, this has helped me amazingly. I do a buzz read on my own stuff all the time. And I have found, even if I post something on Facebook, a poem or a song lyric or something like, oh, I didn't see that I had that. But when you read it out loud, you pick it up. So that's one thing, is to use a buzz read. The second thing is that I think it's always important, but not too soon, to have a trusted reader read a segment of what you've written. Because, and I always say to them, I don't need criticism so much as I need questions. Like, how is this working? Or I felt that, did you want her to be this, self-effacing? Something like that. So I said, give me all the questions that you have, because that's a second look, you know, and a reader's look rather than the writer's look. So I think that's an important thing to do too. And the last thing, when I am reading too much, and I've been an avid reader all my life, but when I'm reading too much, I don't have the carved out headspace to do the writing. That is essential. Wow. So I put, and I try to, so I'm in 2 book clubs, which is almost too much, because I'm, you know, constantly trying to keep up with those guys while writing my own, you know, next novel. But it crowds out that space, that creative space that I need when you know how when you're writing, like you're doing right now, you immerse in your characters. It's like being an actor who plays all of the parts, who is set designing everything and setting the tone and the mood. So you're a director too. So if I'm reading too much, and the other thing that I can tend to do is I can tend to copy the style of someone without even wanting to. So I have to put reading off to the side, and so like I'm going to do that for the rest of the summer, and just say to my book clubs, I may have the book read in August, I may not, but
Interesting. That's interesting. So you pull back on your reading when you're working and really immersed in a project. You pull back a bit. That's interesting. I can see that. I think I have done that sort of, you know, instinctively in the past. This week in particular, as I have all this time and space, I am reading a lot. And I think because it feels like a gift, you know, it feels like this rare opportunity that I can actually go back and forth so much between the reading and writing. But because I have so much writing time, it's not taking from it. So I'm enjoying that as a very unique experience. But another thing I was thinking as you were talking about your buzz read is even sometimes doing a buzz read with a novel or piece of art that you admire. And I know my former writing teacher used to recommend taking, like, say, Hemingway, and either reading it aloud or writing it out, just sort of transcribing it, spending 10 to 15 minutes a day with some piece of literature and just copying it with your hand, you know, like you don't have to think about it. You're just transcribing it. And that would up level your writing. You know, it just, there's something about it. It goes into the wiring and you get the cadence, or you're picking things up. And I've never actually tried that. I've done a lot of reading and I read things aloud, but I've never done that piece of it where I'm, you know, just kind of copying over another piece of writing. But that's an interesting idea as well.
Well, and it's just like artists who often in their schooling anyway, and maybe later in their career, they'll take one of the masters and a particularly famous and try to duplicate what that person was able to bring out in color and composition and brushstroke. And the result is you learn.
Yeah.
You learn, oh, look, that color is next to that, and this is a long, thin line next to a short one, or the perspective is off to the side, or, whatever it would be. And I think those are good practices in terms of self-teaching. But I can't do it too much now because I think I'm too susceptible to other people's styles. And so in order for, like in Speed of Dark, one more shot, I have three very distinct narrators, and one is a black man, and one is a white woman, and one is Lake Michigan. So each of them had to have a very unique and distinct voice. And in order to do that, I had to immerse into that character deeply and not be influenced by anything else. And in a sense, I became that person as I was writing those chapters, their chapters.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. It's a balance, right? Where we get our inspiration and we want to sort of be in training mode or be learning, always up leveling our game. But at the same time, like you said at the beginning, to keep that voice, that channel of spirit clear, to know what is it I want to say and let myself do it, get rid of all those other voices. So we're kind of contradicting ourselves in a way, saying bring in other voices and read, but then don't listen.
It's kind of a seesaw or a dance between often. I went to, this is years ago, Judith Guest, who wrote Ordinary People. I went to a workshop that she gave, and this was out in, I think, Elgin, Illinois. And she at one point looked out over the crowd. She was really kind and cool. And she said, I know you're all writers. And she said, I give you all permission to write. And there was something kind of magical about that. And I thought, ooh, someone, and she was a bestseller, and of course they made the movie. Robert Redford directed it, of Ordinary People. She was wildly successful, and I think I've kept that inside of me forever. So thank you, Judith Guest, wherever you are.
Well, I'm sure that you have now given permission to someone else in the same way Judith gave it to you. So thank you for that. I think that, coming from an AP English teacher who says we can all write and we can put aside the critic, got it. That's good permission. Yeah. Well, thank you, Trisha. I won't keep you. I really enjoyed chatting, and hope to see you soon. Got to see you, I think, last week in person, and so I'll look forward to that again. And happy writing.
And same to you, and good luck with the rest of your week.
Thank you. Talk soon. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Tammy.